Hi, I'm Ben, and today we're going to be looking at classes from 4th edition that could use a little bit of a comeback. Now, as we all know, 4th edition is a little divisive among Dungeons & Dragons players. Those who saw it come out after 3.5 found themselves very disappointed by the very video gamey mechanics and just how different it was from the bog standard Dungeons & Dragons we had known up to that point. That being said, though, now that we have some time away from the system to look at it with fresh eyes, I think people are starting to realize that there is some good stuff in that edition. I think Matt Colville has been a big proponent of this, reminding us of minions and monster rolls and how balanced all of the classes felt in 4th edition, and I could say for a fact, I can't say the same thing about 5th edition. And so, I'll be honest, I kind of wanted to see what all the hubbub was about, and I started poking around in some old 4E books and PDFs, and I found some really cool stuff. It's really intriguing to me, and I've noticed that there are a lot of classes from this edition that did not make the jump into 5th edition. There are some that I see made it in some capacity, like I see the Avenger, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of an Oath of Vengeance Paladin. Or I see the Seeker class, and I'm like, okay, Arcane Archer, I get it. However, there are some classes that I still haven't really seen in a new form in 5th edition, and I wanted to take a look at each of the player's handbooks from 4E and talk about a class that I wish were ported over into 5th edition. The first of these is the Warlord. In 4th edition, these guys were leaders. They commanded their friends on the battlefield and bolstered their combat prowess. In a very roundabout way, I do see some ways that 5th edition kind of allows you to live out this Warlord fantasy, but I just don't think it's quite there. There are things like the Battlemaster and some of the Paladin's aura abilities, and there might be some kind of multi-class there, but I really would love to see a class that focuses on this from the ground up. Looking at the 4E abilities was so cool. There were so many neat abilities that help your allies move around the battlefield or shut down the movement of your enemies. You also get to decide at the beginning if you're an inspiring warlord or more of a tactical one. And it would be interesting to see a class in 5th edition that lets you decide whether you are going to focus on your charisma or your intelligence. And just in general, it would be nice to have a martial class that doesn't rely on their strength or dexterity like all the other ones we have so far. I could basically see this class being the Battlemaster, but turned up to 11 with all sorts of different maneuvers you could do and different auras eventually that allow you to help and bolster your allies on the battlefield. And then maybe each of the archetypes focuses on one of the mental ability scores, with one being intelligence. You are a tactical leader. Another being charisma, you are inspiring your allies on the battlefield. And the last one being wisdom, using your battlefield experience to aid your allies. Maybe the wisdom warlord is more of a tactical trapper. The second 4th edition player's handbook has a lot of really cool classes in it, but the one that really caught my eye was the Shaman. Shamans are also leaders, but they draw their power from a primal source rather than a martial one. They also empower themselves and their allies with the help of animal spirits that come to their aid. We do see some of this flavor in the 5e Druid class. However, the Shaman is much more about having this spirit companion that aids you and grows with you as you level. In a lot of ways, this is also like the classic Summoner archetype, something that we really desperately are missing in 5th edition. I could see the Shaman in 5e being really interesting. Maybe some kind of half-caster that has a companion that is part of their leveling. Maybe they have something similar to an evocation system that lets them add powers to their companion. But then otherwise having some spellcasting that gives them a little bit of control and that sort of primal feel. The Druid spell list would be really good for them, not only being in flavor, but also giving them spells that would allow them to bolster their spirit, or if they wanted to do some control-y things like spike growth. And then each of the Shaman archetypes could be based around the kind of spirit they have. I think that's really cool and evocative. How different can you make a bear Shaman versus a hawk one or a panther? We already see some of this in the Totem Barbarian, and I think it'd be really neat to take all of those same totems and apply them to the Shaman, fleshing them out further and giving them all sorts of neat abilities. I think this would also be a further proof of concept of what they were kind of trying to do with the revised Beastmaster, but giving even more of the class's focus on that companion would give them the flexibility to really make your spirit feel like it's its own. And then lastly, from the third player's handbook from 4th edition is one that is a little divisive, is the Psion class. Now, obviously, Wizards of the Coast already took a crack at porting this class over to 5th edition with the Mystic class. Now, I won't fight anybody on that one. The Mystic has a lot of problems with it, and we already see that it seems like Wizards of the Coast has kind of scrapped that idea, taken some of the archetypes and put them on other classes. However, even with those subclasses out, I think there is still merit to a Psion class in 5th edition. In 4th edition, they were psionic controllers who could either mess with the minds of their foes or use telekinetics to push them around the battlefield at their whim. And even just in that concept, I think there is a lot of flavor to explore and a lot of ground that has been left by the archetypes like Psi Knight and Soul Knife. Psionics will always be something that's really divisive in Dungeons & Dragons, and whether they have a place. Personally, I did used to be on the anti-psionic side of things, but I've sort of gotten off my high horse, and I've thought about all of the fantasy that is still possible with psionics and how they don't really mess with the jive of a classic fantasy setting. Anyways, I mean, it's just a different way to channel magic, whether that's from arcane, divine, primal, and now psionic. And there are so many characters from pop culture that would fit into a psionic archetype. Ones that right now you really have to kind of work to see them in 5th edition. While yes, Shaman can kind of be done by Druid and Warlord can kind of be done by Battlemaster / Paladin, there really isn't a good way to do psionics in 5th edition yet. And I think it deserves a class, it just needs to not be the Mystic. This is one that I think would really benefit from a structure similar to the Warlock. Warlock is obviously an outlier in 5th edition, basically taking its structure directly from 4th edition. I think Warlock is one of the strongest and most customizable classes in the game, and I think that's really, really good, and we should have more classes structured like the Warlock. And the fact that a Psion would be another intelligence caster, I think is really beneficial to the game as well. If a Psion were structured like a Warlock, we would see all sorts of the flavor of it, with it still fitting into the balance of 5th edition. We would see minor telekinetic or telepathic abilities with your cantrips, and then every once in a while you get a neat telepathic or telekinetic trick. Instead of patrons, you pick the type of psychic power that you focus on, whether maybe you mess with people's emotions, or telepathy, or telekinetics. And then instead of invocations, we have something that allows you to augment your psychic abilities. This is something that was in the Psion class in 4th edition, and I think is really cool, working in a way similarly to meta magic in 5th edition. With all this together, we get a really interesting class that is moving enemies out of their ideal position, affecting them mentally with conditions, and augmenting those powers in extra ways to make them really unique to the Psion casting them. Those were just a couple of the standouts for me, however. I hope you guys found this interesting. I'm having a lot of fun diving into the books. I don't know if I'll play a game of 4E yet, but I'm really, really intrigued by the mechanics. I like a lot of what I see in that system. Are there some other classes that I didn't cover here that you think would be great ports into 5th edition? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, consider liking it. And if you like the kind of content we do here, please consider subscribing. If you're already subscribed to the channel and you want to find some other way to support us, you can consider supporting us on Patreon. There are a couple people who do that already. Thank you so much to Painted Sky, Faizan Ahmad, and Robert Allen Klaus III. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on your next short rest.